There are 4 key points in the school project, and they were chosen by the local community in the beginning of the project. And those are healthy, traditional, log-built, and a modern learning environment. So the building is to promote the well-being of its users, to be built with massive wood with traditional methods and materials when possible, and to support the contemporary learning and teaching methods. A fundamental aspect to consider when designing learning spaces is to study on what kind of aspects would help the children to concentrate and to focus. For example, stress can be harmful for memory and learning, but there's a study showing that a wooden classroom interior can actually reduce the pupil's stress. So it's wonderful that the use of wood is not only sustainable, but that it could support learning.
The key points of my project of the school, we created a learning commons, which connects to the library, science lab, the cooking lab. And those spaces are named like a library called like Alexandria, and the cooking lab called Cordon Bleu, and the science lab called Da Vinci lab. There is no wall between the learning commons and those spaces. The children can explore their interest using those spaces, and also they can choose their style to study. They can sit on hammock or cushions or sofas or chairs. The fundamental aspects keep in mind in the design process to improve in the use of learning spaces are removing the wall between the classroom and the corridor. The sound absorption becomes very important when we remove the wall. The noise becomes white noise when we have sound absorption. The white noise is very important for human beings because we human beings evolved in jungle. Children can concentrate in the environment where there are noise.
In our project in Lumion, I think there are 2 major points. The first one is, of course, that it's a transformation project. We have changed a beautiful old Béton Bru school from the 60s into a vibrant modern school. Second point is that we are dealing with a school with a very specific vision on education. So we worked this vision of education into our project, and we added our own vision on what are educational spaces. One of the fundamental aspects of designing for schools is that you look into the very specifics of the essence of teaching, because there are many schools, there are Montessori schools, there are gender plan schools, there are each decade has its new visions on how to deal with schools. But I think if you go down to the essentials of teaching, then it has something to do. You need to create spaces where you can make a presentation, where you can get instructions, where you can have one people creating an enthusiasm for a certain subject. And you need spaces for collaboration, working together in smaller groups, and you need spaces where people can concentrate. And what I quite often see in school buildings, and these spaces are forgotten. Also that it's not only about the dynamics of teaching, of presentation, of working together, but it's also about contemplation, about concentration. So I think if you look at our schools, you will always find these 3 aspects in the way we design the buildings.
The museum project was to be inserted in an area of pre-Hispanic occupation, a sacred place where the respect for the environment became the main premise. Therefore, the project tries to recollect and recall elements from pre-Hispanic architecture to reinsert them into contemporary grammar and turn its sacred territory into a museum piece itself. Designing a project in a place like this is a huge responsibility. Therefore, the building places itself in a weak attitude towards its environment. The scale is handled in complicity with the topography and the uneveness of its ground. The museum project was born from its relationship with the territory and its topographic trace and the ability to establish itself as a mediator with the sanctuary.
No podemos hablar de la Massana sin hacer referencia a dónde está situado. Y la Massana forma parte de un proyecto mucho más global, en el centro del casco antiguo de Barcelona. Y que la voluntad de este proyecto, que son 3 intervenciones, era coser la ciudad y era sobre todo hacer ciudad, hacer espacio público. Y respecto a la Massana, sí que lo más fundamental es precisamente la comprensión de lo que es un espacio de aprendizaje, un espacio en que la relación de los estudiantes casi es más importante fuera de las aulas que en las aulas mismas. Y es un pequeño mundo lo que es la Escuela de la Massana, en que las circulaciones son múltiples, los espacios casuales se multiplican por todos los lados y que el hacer educación en los corredores es casi tan importante como la educación que se puede dar dentro de las aulas.
The key idea behind the Early Childhood Center in Fosleris was to rethink spaces for young children and to create spaces for those children who had not had access to learning spaces before. The idea was to create fun, playful, and safe spaces that created a sense of belonging. One of the fundamental ideas was to create space that is legible, and we did this by creating colorful spaces as a sense of wayfinding. Classrooms had its specific colors, public spaces had high volumes, and that became quite intimate in the classroom spaces that led out into courtyards that were safe and spacious and able to play in them. The idea was also to use artwork that was done by local designers and to create a sense of belonging that is of its place and reflects the children themselves.
Which are the key points of your project? Well, our project of the School of and Centre de Quartier des Paquis aims to first preserve the quality of the existing school of the 70s. It was our commitment to declare these utopias of those times as relevant for the 2020s, not only as a tribute to sustainability and reuse, but to ideas regarding strong integration of primary schools to their neighborhood. We thus found methods of preserving and converting, installing the school in new contemporary issues. The strong and vivid colors, both restored and new, give the school a strong identity in this very urban and dense neighborhood in Geneva. What are the fundamental aspects to keep in mind in the design process to improve in the use of the learning spaces? Well, building schools is about building physical space for teaching and learning. Contemporary learning spaces require even more than ever high architectural qualities, heights, surfaces, light, tactile and playful materials, stronger relationships to their environment, spaces of the in-between after class, waiting and pickup areas in full protection and security, encounter spaces, flexibility in use, semi-public spaces for clubs, coherent and differential atmospheres and climates related to welcoming different types of activities. Today, spaces are required and not standardized classes. A school in 2020 is a cultural act of contemporary public policy where volumes are made to accommodate, welcome, and educate students to be tolerant citizens anchored in their neighborhood and overlooking global questions.